I will not say the surname of our next speaker because I know I will butcher that to beyond everything, like you can see on the program, but I want to welcome Jakub from Unbound Creations talking about prototype everything. So give a warm welcome. And you have to teach me how to say your name properly.
Hi, my name is Jakub Kasztalski, and I'm the founder and creative director at Unbound Creations. We've released 5 commercial titles on all of the platforms, the consoles, PC. We've been in a number of shows. We've won several awards. And in this talk, I kind of want to go through the process of prototyping that I go in my studio and hopefully give you some ideas how to prototype better and how to prototype the things that a lot of people normally don't think about prototyping. So let's jump into the first question. What is a prototype? I think a lot of us have a whole stack of poorly named Unity projects that we kind of like work on something and abandon. So what really is the prototype? It's kind of like a miniature version of your game. And why do you have a prototype? It's to test your core idea, maybe to answer some unknown question like, is this fun? Does this work? And it can also be used to refine your idea. So it's kind of an iterative process. I don't think like prototype is something that you like get out there and you're done. It's something that I think I go back through several iterations. But the title of this talk is called Prototype Everything. So what does everything mean? Usually when we talk about prototypes, we think, oh, gameplay. But that's, I think, where we're making a mistake. I think we should be looking at everything. Art, camera, player movement, heads-up display, sound, music, your logo, even your GIFs, your marketability, your target audience, your genre, market position. Everything should be prototyped when you're working on your game. So let's kind of dig into like the creation of the prototype. It starts with an idea. I think you ask 100 devs how they come up with an idea, and you'll get 100 different answers. And different games focus on different things. There's some are more about fun, some are about the humor, some about challenge, puzzle. Some are more about like some cool technical thing. Some challenge players' viewpoints. So a lot of games that I've worked on are kind of social commentary. They try to make people question their own biases, or maybe there's something else. So to give you 2 examples, Untitled Goose Game is a game which at the core is about humor. So a prototype for this kind of a game would be probably just a small area where like maybe you can grab some items, or maybe you can interact with an NPC or 2 and kind of just see like, is this funny? Am I making players laugh? Celeste, on the other hand, a prototype for Celeste could be something as simple as just a single screen that tests like, the platforming mechanics, maybe a challenge or 2, do they feel tight, do they feel snappy? It can start as little as that. And I'm a big proponent of, keeping it simple, stupid, KISS. Just kind of think about like, what is that you actually need in your prototype? Do you even need like a pause menu? Do you need a main menu? Like do you need like 100 different variations of enemies? Is just one enough? Which kind of brings us to like the main thing that everybody always talks in every single prototyping talk, which is the gameplay, which I am actually not gonna get into because there's already like a million talks. Just go to the GDC channel, Google like how to prototype, and you're gonna find amazing resources about finding the fun, finding the flow state, the zone. And I wanna get into the other stuff because as I said, the topic of this talk is prototype everything. So I wanna talk about everything else that's usually not talked about. So let me start with prototyping the art and sound of your game, which is something that I think, especially a lot of new and coming indie devs, completely forget about. So here's a screenshot from an actual prototype for one of my games. Can you guys tell what the hell is going on here? Yeah, probably not. You'd probably have to spend like a minute just reading everything, looking at those percentages. It's terrible. But if I showed you this is actually the same exact game, but after I kind of reworked the art, immediately kind of like, okay, it's kind of like a cozy vibe to it. It has like smiling face above people, so it's probably managing their happiness levels. There's like some menu on the left that has like some different metrics, so it's probably like a management sim. So again, compared to this versus this, you completely get a different impression even before you start playing it. And that's kind of the most important aspect of art is it creates a certain game feel and it creates player expectations even before the player starts playing the game. To give you 2 other great examples, Shadow of Colossus is a game where you're climbing those mythical beasts and trying to kill them. And this game would not be the same without this like dark, somber atmosphere, without its towering behemoths. Another example, Yoshi's Woolly World, which is like a cutesy, crafty world where you're Yoshi, and a lot of the visual design inspires gameplay. So I think you can like unwind people or like unspool things because they're made of yarn, and the gameplay inspires the art, and the art inspires gameplay. So if you just prototype one thing, you'd be missing on a half of the experience. Same with music. I'm sure that a lot of you guys are seeing this picture and you're immediately hearing the tune. You already are in that mood. You already get in the zone. So art is important for creating a player expectation, like teaching the player what kind of a game to expect and how it's going to feel. And if you're already prototyping all the gameplay and putting all this effort into making this thing, why wouldn't you also play around with the art? Why wouldn't you play around with music? All those other aspects, you're already putting all the effort. And the art style isn't just about the expectation, it also impacts gameplay directly. It impacts readability. So, are things contrasting nicely? Are they immediately understandable? Are icons, do they make sense? They communicate gameplay and player expectations in terms of gameplay. So for instance, when you have an enemy attack and he makes a sound like, yeah, he's charging, he's getting ready. It communicates UI usage, especially in like resource management or strategy games, big focus is making the UI clear. Again, what is going on here? Versus this, it's much more readable and much more usable immediately without even knowing what the game is fully about. And another important point is that art also communicates your vision. And that's something that in my process, I usually work with a prototype, I iterate over it, and then I like to find people, find artists, find other collaborators to make the vision better. And having a solid prototype that looks and sounds kind of like what you want it to do, looks and sounds like how you want it to, makes it a lot easier to communicate your vision to other team members. So here's a screenshot from the prototype of my very first game from almost 9 years ago now. And here's what it looked like at the end after it got like art passed and everything. So even though everything has been redone, kind of the color scheme, the general vibe, it kind of carries through. And it was just so much easier to give this to my artist and be like, hey, listen, I want something in this kind of vibe and style, but just make it better. And it definitely cuts down on the iteration time when you have something to show. And don't worry about being perfect. It's, again, game development is an iterative process. You're probably going to revise the scene over and over. Just have some kind of a vision, some general direction. It's a mediocre vision is better than no vision at all. And if you find out that your vision was bad, that's a good thing, because it's better to find that out that, hey, my art style doesn't work for this style of a game. Maybe it's too cartoony. It's better to find that out early than when you're a year into production and you realize you have to redo a year worth of all your art assets. A common excuse I hear from a lot of especially new indie devs is like, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I'm not an artist, I don't know, I'm just going to use cubes and spheres. Well, you're in luck. It's never been easier to find quality art, either for free or cheaply. Unity and Unreal Asset Stores just have like so many resources you can just look for, and you don't have to, again, be precise. Good enough is good enough. Just something that's kind of vaguely around what you're aiming for, your vision. Like maybe you want it to be low poly, tons of low poly assets. Maybe you want it slightly stylized, tons of assets like that. To one order of caution though is I would say like always look for like production ready assets, just because you never know what placeholder will end up being in the final game. There's also a ton of other resources beside Unity Asset Store that you can look for. And if anybody wants slides so we can check it out later, I'll publish those. Again, just always check licenses, make sure you're not stealing someone's work, always give credit, always cite your sources. I always keep like a list of like basically all the links to everything I'm using so that I basically just dump into my credits at the end of the game if I don't replace it. Which kind of now jumps into the second point is if you're already prototyping your game, if you're already gameplay, if you're already prototyping your art and music, you can already start prototyping your marketing. Because it's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of indie devs these days. I saw this amazing statistic that 75% of all game studios only ever release one game, which means they just don't hit the mark on being profitable enough to keep going. And you can see the numbers just dwindle further down as you go. And my hot take after having published 5 commercial games and working on several others is that you shouldn't be asking, is this good or a bad idea? What you should be asking is, how big is your target audience and how easily can you reach them? Because I promise you, no matter how terrible your game is, there's going to be one person in the world who's going to absolutely love it. But the question is, can you reach them, and are they enough for you to make yourself financially sustainable? So when you're already working on the game, making it a prototype, you can already start throwing out GIFs, images out there. And I'm actually working in 2 prototypes right now, and one of them consistently gets 3 times as much engagement on any platform that I put, which already educates me that, hey, this is probably the more commercially viable project of the 2. So that's the one I'm going to invest more in. You can find your audience when you're already throwing out information, like, is my audience on Reddit, on Imgur, are they on TikTok, on Tumblr? You can start figuring it out. You can start experimenting with different GIFs and screenshots to figure out, like, is your idea even marketable? Maybe it's really cool to you, but maybe you're finding that other people don't like it as much. What is it about that is even marketable? Is it like the visual the beautiful vistas? Is it a cute character? Is it like fast action? What is it? How do you market this game? Who is it marketable towards? So again, like, who's your audience? Is it kids? Is it parents? Is it millennials? Is it Gen Z? And it can also help you find your $1 million GIF, which is the thing that like just captures your whole gameplay in like a 5-second loop that just has the potential to go viral. If you want, you can even like play around with like spending money on ads. That's something I've done. I've A/B tested like even like game logos. I'm gonna skip a little bit. I've tested like different Steam capsules early on, just like see which one gets more engagement. It was just even slight variations, since it's eventually when you launch your Steam page or you're in the Nintendo Switch page, whatever, you're gonna need all that art. So you're already prototyping everything else, so might as well start prototyping that early. You can start figuring out what kind of influencers are going to be wanting to play your game. You can start researching, similar genres, similar vibes. Like if you're making a cozy game and you have a cozy art style, you can search for influencers who are working on similar cozy games. So again, because you're prototyping every element of your game, you can already start researching that, because you just don't have cubes and spheres. You have something more viable that you can kind of test against other games and find who likes those games. And you can apply that mindset to everything: your logo, your menus, your T-shirts when you're going to conferences. Just start testing everything and just keep that mindset open of, I'm just prototyping every single aspect of this game, of my studio, of my business. And kind of to wrapping things up now. So, okay, you're doing this thing, you're prototyping all the elements, but when is it done? Like, how do you know when it's time to like move on? And for me, it's simply asking myself, whenever it's enough to show it to someone and they can play it without me having to explain anything, because that's how it's going to be once the actual game is released. So the next big step is showing it to people. I like to kind of rope in my friends initially, like people who are close to me, like, hey, can I show you this and check it out? And that's a great way to kind of like iron out the very low-hanging fruit. So maybe your tutorial explanation is bad. Maybe the game is not self-explanatory enough. And that's a great way to like figure that out. Like, even if you're not ready for your prototype is ready to be shown to people, you can use your basically friends to be like, does it even make sense? Do they know how this plays? Maybe like something isn't smooth. Maybe like you're not giving them enough guidance to know where to go. Always take things from your friends with a grain of salt, because they're friends, so they're gonna be too nice. But it kind of can help you figure out whether your prototype is ready to be shown to other people. And when you're doing that, always watch their reactions, like little small things, like if they tilt their head, they're being confused, if they're stuck on a specific section. And this is really the moment, because you've welcomed this prototype, you're kind of stuck in your tunnel vision, so everything makes sense to you, everything feels fun to you, but until you see someone else play it, you're not gonna know if the prototype actually works. So this is kind of like a very necessary step of prototyping. Don't fall in the fallacy of just sharing internally in your team. Always show it to other people. And once you kind of go for those in-person sessions, you can make it more broadly. Recruit people from your Discord, maybe on Twitter, maybe put it in itch.io, and you can get results by just preparing a simple like survey, like Google's not survey, but like Google has like Google Forms. Yeah, you can use that. Or you can even build it straight into the prototype. So what I did initially when I was working on one of my games, after every level, I would just have a very quick in-game survey that would just ask them to like rate it on like 3 5-point scale on like these 3 questions, and like there was an extra text field. So it was just right there built into the prototype, so I can get remote data easily. And kind of final question, let's say you've done all that and people are just, it's just not working, people aren't enjoying it. So what if your prototype is just bad, you know? Sometimes the truth is you just have to let go. I kind of make a joke earlier about having all those Unity projects that you've abandoned, and I think I've gone for like 10 in the just past year alone. But sometimes it's worth asking like, oh, is the idea bad or is the implementation bad? Maybe I'm just haven't figured out how to make it work. And that's kind of tricky, and sometimes it's a little bit of a gamble knowing that. And again, I feel like doing those in-person prototype sessions can be very informative. And to that, I wanted to give a little bit of an example of a little prototype that could. So my latest release is called the game Rain in Your Parade, which is a game where you play as a cute cloud and you ruin everybody's day in a variety of like silly levels and environments. The game released 2 years ago on Steam. It was the day 1 on Game Pass. It released on Nintendo Switch and has received pretty great reviews. And we just very recently, in the past month, just hit like overwhelmingly positive on Steam. So by all accounts, it was a great success. But it didn't always look like this. In fact, when I first was prototyping it, it looked like this. As you can see, it's kind of a world of difference. And when I first announced it, it did not meet any of my expectations. I kind of had like a few metrics, you know, kind of what I wanted when I announced it, like engagement on Twitter, like press response, influencer response, and it just fell short on all of that. So by all my metrics, like this is not going to be a successful project. But I kind of felt just having exhibited, having shown it to people that the idea was there. So I kind of gambled on the fact that like, okay, this kind of early prototype, I think it works. I just haven't figured, it's not a bad idea. I just haven't nailed it yet. And I kind of went through that like iterative process. And one thing that I realized is like just the art style is just didn't cut it. It just looked too much like a flat shaded, boxy asset flip, too much like a cheap mobile game. So I went through the iterative process because again, I was already like prototyping the art style, and you can now see the 4 different stages, the different art style that I experimented until I finally arrived at kind of like that cozy, like crafty style, similar to like Yoshi's Woolly World or Paper Mario, that finally kind of like started getting the game's attention that I think it deserved. And then another big element that happened when I was showing, that was the first time I ever showed the game publicly at an expo in DreamHack, and I've noticed that, wait a minute, I have a lot of kids coming in and playing the game, and then they come back and they bring their other kid friends, and they come back with the parents, and the parents are laughing at the jokes, the kids are enjoying the mayhem of the game, and I realized, wait a minute, am I making a kids game? I think I'm making a kids game. So I kind of pivoted more from the original, like more adult design to just being more accessible and kind of a game that, you know, older millennials can enjoy all the jokes and references, younger kids can enjoy like the colorful mayhem. And again, because I didn't just have like cubes and blocks, but because I had art style, because I had music, because it was something that I could just show to people, like at an event, it helped, it gave me that opportunity to find my audience, to discover that what I'm really making was slightly different than I thought what I was making. And that led to the eventual success. So I don't know if we have any question time.
8 seconds.
All right. Well, I'll just skip to the end. Then I have all my information. If you guys have any questions or you want the slides, you know, just follow me, like reach out to me. I always love connecting with other developers. And on that note, thank you for helping me prototype this talk.
Thank you, Jakub. I'm really sorry about the questions, Jakub.